Hello and a very warm welcome to the Daily News Simplified session of the Raus IAS dated 27th of April 2024. Today in this session, we are going to take up important news and articles from three leading newspapers, that is the Hindu, Indian Express and the Business Line. On your screen, you have the topics listed out, that is 2 topics from the mains perspective and 4 from the prelims. But before starting with our discussion, there is a small request that if you like our initiative, then please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. On that note, let's start with our first topic of discussion. Now, the first topic for discussion that we have today is regarding the coal production in India. And in this context, this article appears on the page 9 of the newspaper Business Line, where it reads that the coal production in India has almost doubled. That is, in terms of the last decade, from the 2014 to 2024, the coal production has doubled. And this topic becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 3, where in the section of Indian economy, you have a topic regarding energy sector in India. And in that context, this topic becomes important. So before going into what has been the increase in terms of the coal production, what is the basic reason for the increase in the coal production and all those aspects, let me give you a brief idea of coal mining in India as such. So coal mining in India, basically it dates back to the year 1744 as per the official government sources. That is, for the first time coal mining was carried out, and in 1774 the first commercial mining was done in India. That is, these are the years where in the 1770s the British rule was gradually expanding, and what happened was that later on in the era of 1840s and 1850s, when railway started getting a push in India, then a lot of requirement was there for the coal to power the engine. And so for that regard, what happened was that in 1851 you had Geological Survey of India as a body. It was formed to look into more areas, prospective areas from where the coal can be extracted. And this was the journey in the pre-independence era. Post independence, if you see in the initial years when India was experimenting with the kind of economic model of development that it should adapt to in the first 2 decades, say as in the 1950s and the 60s, the growth was not very high, that is in terms of the coal production. And subsequently what happened was that in 1972 and 73, that is in different phases, the production of coal, that is the mining of coal, was nationalized. That is, Coal India Limited was formed, and it was given the authority to basically a kind of monopoly to mine coal in India. And in this regard, subsequently the development of coal production took place, but definitely it was not up to that level, and that we will see how it has evolved in the last decade. Now, for this, you can see in the map what are the major areas where the coal production is taking place. So currently, as per the government sources, India has the 5th largest coal reserves in the world. And in terms of consumption, India ranks 2nd globally. So when you talk about the production of coal in India, this is the major region, that is the region of the Gondwana land that you might have read in the geography, the portion of the Gondwana land that is situated in India, particularly in the eastern India, where you have the states like Jharkhand, then you have states like Chhattisgarh, then you have the states like West Bengal, Odisha, and these states which constitute majority of the coal production in India. For example, in terms of coal reserves, as per the government sources, Odisha has the highest quantity of coal reserves in India. Although in terms of production, if you see, it is Jharkhand that is leading. That is, the leading producer of coal is Jharkhand, but the highest amount of coal reserves is with Odisha, as you can see in this map also. And what are some prominent coal fields in India, such as Raniganj coal field, the coal mines that we have, Jharia coal mines that we have. Then you have a region in Chhattisgarh such as Korba region that is very famous for coal mining there in Chhattisgarh. So this is the mapping of the coal mining in India. That is in terms of the map. If you want to show, you can show this map. Then let's come to the core aspect of this article, which it has tried to show in terms of the increase in the coal production, as was the headline, that is coal production in India has doubled. So what has happened is that the domestic coal production in this decade of 2014 to 2024, that is, it is called as the NDA years. In this, what has happened is that this coal production has increased by how much? 55%. How much? 55%. That is from around 565 million tons, it has come to around 997 million tons. This has been the growth. So almost it has touched how much? 1 billion tons. It has touched almost how much? 1 billion tons. And if you look at the future targets of the government of India, then it has a target of achieving the coal production of 1.5 billion tons by the financial year of 2030. So we are in the right direction in terms of the production aspect of the coal. But, and if you see another aspect, that is the coal imports. Similarly, if you see, when the production in the country is increasing, what will happen is that our dependence for import of coal will reduce. For example, in India, majority of coal imports, if you talk about, there are two types of coal, that is coking and non-coking coal. That is, coking coal is majorly used in the production of steel, and this is for the conventional energy production that we have. And so for this, for coking coal, we are majorly dependent on Australia. And for non-coking coal, it is Indonesia. This is the scenario currently, but the government, what it has been trying to do is that it has been trying to reduce the coal dependence in terms of the import. And what has been the target that has been set? That is, in terms of the power sector, the coal import that is taking place, it should be brought down to how much? 2%, just 2% by the financial year of 2025, and going forward in the next year, that is financial year of 2026, it should be eventually zero. That is, there should be no net import of coal by the power sector in India. This is the target. And what is happening is, basically the issue is that when you extract coal, it is just one stage of action that is taking place, but the final product is what? You have to take that coal to somewhere where it can be utilized in a productive form, that is at a power generation plant. But in the medium channel, that is in the transportation network, in the logistics network, what is happening is that there is a huge gap of efficiency. That is, there is a lack of efficiency existing there, and that is what the article tries to highlight, that the logistics in coal sector is still lagging behind, that in spite of reaching 1 billion tons, we are constantly lagging behind in utilizing those 1 billion tons of coal production efficiently. And similarly, in terms of alternative uses, for example, the coal gasification that we have, then coal bed methane that we have, these kind of uses of coal have not been promoted up to that level as was expected with the increase of 1 billion ton of coal production in India. But with the increase in coal production, it is important to understand that some sort of reforms must have been carried out by government of India that has yielded in such a high increase. That is, in a span of 10 years, it has almost doubled. So in that context, let us look into what sort of reforms basically helped in increasing the coal production in India. Now you can see this graph, that when you talk about the production aspect, you can see that in 2012-13 or 13-14, if you see from here, there is a massive increase in the production of coal. And if you talk about the import, then you can see that it has been a varying pattern, but overall what is there? There is a increase. So although we have been increasing our production, but the overall import dependence has not reduced in commensurate form, that is in proportionate form. So in that context, basically let us look at what are the reforms that helped in increase in the production of coals. Now the first thing that we have here is that the transparent auctions. Now you all must have studied about the coal scam that took place in India, where the the allocation of many blocks was struck down by the Supreme Court in a major judgment, And subsequently, what was done by the government was that it came up with a new act, that is Coal Mines Act of 2015, where it tried to bring more digitalized and more transparent form of auctioning provision into the action. And that is why this has been one reason that more and more entities have been participating and more equitable distribution has been taking place in terms of auctioning process. Secondly, if you see in 2018, what happened was that the commercial mining by the private sector was allowed. And what happened was that with this, a lot of competition was put into action by the entry of the private firms. That is, the monopoly of Coal India Limited was kind of done away with. And with the increased competition, what happened was that there was increased production. And this is one reason, that is entry of private firms. Similarly, for streamlining, like for example, you are producing the coal here and then you have to transport it to the power generation plants. So in between these, there is still a lot of lack of efficiency that is prevailing. So for monitoring all those issues, what happened was that government launched Prakash portal, that is streamlining of the coal supply chain. That is, what is the stock of supply, how much it is being put into transportation, what is the demand basically from the factories, from the power generation plants, and this entire thing is basically collaborated into one platform, and it is streamlined through what? Prakash portal. And similarly, to monitor the quality of coal, for example, if you are producing 1 billion ton of coal but it is lacking in quality, then what is the use of it? So similarly, to streamline the quality and to better assess the quality of coal that is being produced, the government has launched what app? Uttam app, to monitor the quality of coal. Similarly, you have other reforms, that is more equitable distribution of revenues. That is, previously what used to happen was that there was fixed model of auction. That is, if you have been allotted say 1000 ton of coal block mine, then the amount you had to pay on it was fixed. Whether that quantity has been extracted or utilized in a productive way, maybe you have not got a lot of benefit, not a lot of profit from that extraction of 1000 tons, but the government has fixed its share that for so many tons of allocation of coal block to you, you would have to pay certain amount to me. But subsequently this was changed, and what happened was that revenue sharing model was introduced. That is, the amount of money that you would have to pay to government for that auction, that tender that you got, will be dependent on what is the amount of revenue you are getting from that coal block or coal mine that you are involved in. For example, if there is a situation where there is a lot of demand of coal and the company is benefiting a lot, for example, generating a lot of profit, then indirectly it has to pay a higher amount to the government in this revenue sharing model. And for example, in sometimes when there is a slow growth of coal sector in India, then the company will get a reprieve that it would not have to pay certain fixed amount, but rather a variable amount which will be quite less in comparison to the erstwhile fixed mechanism model. So this is one change that has been brought about. Then you have the coal logistics plan and policy that has been introduced. As I told you, that in the transportation of coal, the 55% of transportation is being done currently through the railway network. And as you know, that railway system in India is still is in itself plagued with a lot of inefficiencies. And in this context, what is happening is that the supply and the dispatch amount, it is not matching. That is, the quantity that is being available for supply and the amount that is reaching to the power plants, that is not commensurate, that is not proportionate. And for this, what has happened is that government has come out with a coal logistics plan and policy so as to streamline the transportation network of the coal, especially through the rail network, so that the cost of transportation through this network will be brought down by 14% subsequently. And then you have a change, that is institutional change, that is a interministerial committee has been constituted, whereby like officials and the ministers of different ministries such as Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Power, and some other ministries, Ministry of Renewable Energy, Ministry of Railways, all these are present in a common committee, that is interministerial committee, so that if there is any issue in the coal sector, it could be solved in an integrated form rather than different ministries taking decisions in a very fragmented manner. So for this purpose, institutional change has been brought about. Then you have the change of allowing FDI up to 100%, where in the coal mining, which was erstwhile it was not allowed. Now we have 100% FDI in the coal sector. Similarly, you have single window clearance system now in the coal licensing. That is, if you are some say stakeholder, you are applying for certain licenses and all those things from the ministry, then there is a single window platform that has been put into effect, and you can apply in that one common platform, and you can get all the clearances, say environmental clearances and all those clearances that you require from a single portal. So these are some major changes that have been brought about. Now with regards to this topic of coal, there are other important aspects also, such as why coal is still relevant to India in spite of the drastic climate change impacts that we are witnessing in India and globally also. So for those aspects, you can see that on the date of 13th of April, that in the DNS conducted by Ankit Sir, you had this topic covered, that why are we still using coal, and subsequently he has also discussed as to how we can streamline the usage of coal and the renewable energy in a balanced proportion. So for that purpose, you can refer to this DNS video of 13th of April. So on this note, let's go to the next article. Now the next article is basically regarding a need for integrated energy policy that has been advocated by the author, and this news appears on the page 6 of the business line, and again becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 3, that is the topic of energy. Now in this context, we are going to understand as to why there is a need for integrated energy policy in India, and if there is a need, how basically we can achieve that. So on that note, let's start with our discussion. Now, need for the integrated energy policy in India. So for the first reason, if you see, it is the energy security concern. So as you all must be knowing that India imports heavily from West Asian countries, and currently if you see the overall oil import dependence of India, it is around 87.7%. That is, this much amount of oil consumption or oil that public is using, it is import dependent. Around 88% of oil is being imported in India for consumption, and of this entire import, around 40% of import is taking from the West Asia region or the Middle East region. Now the issue is that, like presently you are seeing that a conflict is going on between Israel and Palestine, and subsequently the conflict is looking like it's going to spread, as Iran has also got involved and some other stakeholders are also getting involved in that. So what will happen is that if there is a conflict of a larger level in that India, in that region, for example, as we had in 1970s and 80s, then what can happen is that if we are dependent on West Asia for 40%, so any kind of conflict in that region will have an impact on the prices of the oil that we are using in India. Like whenever there is a war or conflict in that region, there is a reduction in the output, and since there is a reduction in the output, there is a reduction in the import that we are having from that region, and subsequently there is a rise in the petrol and the diesel prices that we see in the news. So for that region, so as to enhance our energy security, as to reduce our import dependence on these regions, it is important that we get an integrated energy policy. Secondly, it is about meeting the growing demand in India. For example, it is said that till 2040, there is going to be 1.8% of annual increase. That is, every year there is going to be an increase of 1.8% in the energy demand till the year of 2040. And also if you see, India is one country that is categorized as into energy poverty. That is, in India there is energy poverty, as in the sense that presently India holds or hosts 18% of global population, but in terms of energy consumption it is just around 6%. That is, if you talk about the global average, then we are just consuming only one third of global average per capita energy consumption. So to address the energy poverty and the growing demand of energy in India, it is important that we come out with an integrated form of policy that suits to our present and also addresses the concerns of the future demand. Thirdly, if you see, there is a lot of domestic resource potential. For example, India has the fifth largest coal reserve, which is highly, underutilized in terms of the kind of utilization that has been done by the Western countries and some other countries. In India, it is highly underutilized. So there is still a lot of prospect and potential for utilization of coal power. Also, if you see in terms of renewable energy in India, for the solar sector, it is said that India has a potential of around more than 700 gigawatt of solar energy in India. And in terms of wind energy, it is around 125 gigawatts. So there is a lot of potential in terms of domestic sector about the energy availability, and it is important that we utilize it through some integrated form of policy. And fourthly, it is about environmental sustainability, because India is one of highly vulnerable countries to the impacts of climate change. So in this regard, also India is third largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So in this regard, what happens is that it becomes important both from the perspective of addressing the global climate change that is happening, and also at the domestic level, the impacts that is being created, that is the heat wave and other situations that we are noticing. So it is important that we make an efficient transition towards more environmentally sustainable form of energy. For example, hydrogen energy, for example, nuclear energy. So these form of energies, that is alternative form of sustainable energies, can be promoted as such. This is the need for integrated energy policy. So basically how we can achieve this, let's look at that. Now the first step that we can take is regarding the energy mix diversification. Presently 70% of the energy production in India, the electricity, it is taking through what? The coal. And for this regard, what we can do is that we can increase the share of renewable energy, that is solar, wind and all those aspects. Nuclear energy can be increased, then hydrogen energy, as we studied earlier. These forms of energies can be their installed capacity can be increased in India. For example, we have the national green hydrogen mission going on in India. So these form of missions, if successful, they can help in making India's energy mix more environmental friendly, which is the need of the hour. So this is one step that we can take. Secondly, subsequently arising from this energy mix diversification, we have the next one, that is renewable energy promotion. As we saw here, that is promotion of solar energy, wind energy, the geothermal energy that we have in the region of Ladakh or Himachal Pradesh and all those regions. So these form of alternative sources can be promoted. Thirdly, it is about infrastructure development, because presently if you see the plant load factor in the thermal power generation, it is very less, that is around 56 to 65%. It is varying. Sorry, 56 to 65% it is varying. And for this matter, what is plant load factor basically suggests that the efficiency of the power plant is just around 56 to 65%. So on this note, what is important is that we increase the efficiency with which the existing power plants are operating, that is making an upgradation in their infrastructure overall. Similarly, smart grids can be promoted, and better energy storage systems can be promoted, so that if there is an increase in the production of, say, renewable energy, and you know that the nature of renewable energy is intermittent in nature, that is, it is quite variable. So it is important that the amount of renewable energy that we are producing, it should be stored efficiently for usage at the later stage. So for this matter, what we need is that infrastructure development. Also, the high rate of losses among the discoms, that is 22% of total loss, that is aggregate technical and commercial losses in the discom sector, it is amounting to around 22%. So it is important that we match up the level of developed nations in terms of around 8 to 10%. So for this, what will we need? That we need to upgrade the infrastructure of the power sector as such. Fourthly, there is a need for energy conservation, that is in terms of streamlining the demand of the energy, that is stopping or halting the wastage of energy as such. For example, the Ujala program, which was launched for the distribution of LED bulbs. So it was basically so that the electricity consumption at the household level that can be minimized. Similarly, we have cooling action plan. So this cooling action plan basically seeks to make the or basically streamline the demand for the cooling, because now is the age of frequent heat waves, and that is why if you see, more and more people are buying air conditioners and other such cooling stuffs. So for this reason, what is important is now we cannot stop them from buying these, because this is a necessity now, kind of the heat wave that we have. So for this, what we can have is that we can have more energy efficient appliances such as cooling appliances and more efficient usage. For example, if you are running an AC, it should be running at an optimum temperature so that it is not consuming a lot of electricity as such. So this is energy conservation model that can be adopted. And then there is research and development. For example, if we have National Green Hydrogen Mission, we have a lot of potential for utilization of biogas in India because of such a high quantity of cattle and cow dung that we have. So for all these reasons, what we'll need is that research and development. For example, India needs to reach the third stage of nuclear program. So for those matters, what we'll need is that more amount of investment in the research and development of energy sector. So this is another step that can be taken. So this is all for this article. Now let's move to the next article. Now the next article is basically in the context of small finance banks, and this news appears on the page 15 of the Indian Express, and says that talks about some criteria for the transition of small finance banks into the universal banks. And this topic becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 3, that is banking in India. And as you can see in previous year question of 2017, you had a direct question on small finance banks in India, of which the answer was A. So this topic becomes quite relevant, and in this context, let us look into some prelim centric information of the small finance banks and the context of the news, that is what is the criteria for transition of a small finance bank into a universal bank. So let's look into that matter. Now basically, small finance banks fall into the category of differentiated banks, and this differentiated banking system in India was launched way back in 2015 by the RBI on the recommendation of Nachiket More Committee. And on the recommendation of Nachiket More Committee, the differentiated banks, that is the small finance banks and the payment banks that you have, for example Airtel and all those banks, this banking system was introduced. And subsequently in 2016, you had the first small finance bank, that is by the name of Capital Small Finance Bank, launched in India, that was given license by the RBI. So what are certain minute aspects of small finance banks? You need how much of capital, that is minimum paid up equity capital of 200 crores. Now previously this was 100 crore, and in this January 2024, this has been subsequently increased to 200 crores. Okay, so this is the paid up capital that you require. Then what is the priority sector lending target of SFBs? That is 75%. And for universal banks, how much it is? Just 40%. Okay, this is 40% for universal bank and 75% for the small finance banks. Then FDI up to 74% is allowed, that is 49% under the automatic route and 74% through the government route. It is allowed in the small finance banks. And these small finance banks basically become important because if you see in India, there are a lot of sectors that are still not covered by the formal banking system, for the reason that many in many areas bank is not accessible to the people, or people are not familiar with the banking mechanism. So to serve those underserved regions, it is on this reason basically the small finance bank was launched way back in 2015. And the other criteria is that if, since it is a small finance bank, so if it is giving loan, there should be certain restriction on how much amount of loan it can give. And in this regard, the restriction is that at least 50% of the loan that it is giving, it should be less than of rupees 25 lakhs, that is less than 25 lakhs. And there is one more restriction, that it cannot give loan to large corporate houses. And these large corporate houses basically are defined in terms of having assets of over around 1000 crore and all those criteria. So this is basically that they cannot give loan to the large corporate houses, and these are licensed under which act? That is Banking Regulation Act of 1949. So license is provided to them under which category? That is Banking Regulation Act. On this note, basically let's understand what is the basic criteria for transition into a universal bank for a small finance bank. And if you want to remember some names, it is Suryodaya Small Finance Bank, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank. These are some prominent small finance banks that are currently operating in India. Now let's look at the criteria for transition into universal bank for a small finance bank. So these criteria are basically, by any logic, if you want to transition into a universal bank, definitely you would have to show a robust financial performance. So track record should be satisfactory for how many? Minimum 5 years. So say for example, if you want to apply today for transitioning into universal bank, for the last 5 years you should be showing sound track of this financial track or the financial performance of your company as a small finance bank. Okay, then the shares of that small finance bank should be listed where? On a stock exchange. So if there is a statement that for an SFB to apply or transform into universal bank, it is necessary to be listed on a stock exchange, so it is a correct statement. And what should be the minimum net worth? It should be 1000 crores. Minimum paid up equity capital was how much? 200 crores. And the minimum net worth for transforming into universal bank is 1000 crores. Then it should meet the capital adequacy requirements. Capital adequacy requirements, that is, what is your risk? What is the ratio of your capital to the risk weighted asset? For example, if you have a high amount of loan that will not be repaid, then you should have an adequate amount of capital to meet that exigencies. Okay, then net profit in the last 2 financial years, that is your financial record should be in net profit for the last 2 financial years. And lastly, in terms of gross non-performing asset and net non-performing asset, there is certain percentage that you have to maintain, that is 3% and 1% respectively. If it is more than that, then what will happen is that you would have to wait for the reduction in the percentage, that is 3 and 1%. Okay, so this is the criteria for transition into universal bank, and based on this discussion, let's solve an MCQ. So consider the following statements, that is priority sector lending targets of universal banks are higher than the small finance banks. So for universal bank it is 40% and small finance bank it is 75%. So this statement is wrong. Similarly, the next statement says that the minimum paid up capital requirement for a universal bank is higher than the small finance banks. And by any logic, this statement is correct, that universal banks are larger banks. For example, SBI, HDFC and all those banks, and definitely the paid up capital will be higher for them. So this statement is correct. So the correct answer is B, that is 2 only. Now on this note, let's move to the next topic. Now the next topic appears in the context of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that we have, and this news appears on the page 12 of the Hindu, saying that there was a meeting, defense ministers meeting of the SCO members in Kazakhstan, and what has happened is that there is some statement given, that is zero tolerance towards terrorism has been the stand of India. And in this context, this topic becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2, that is international relations, and the prominent global groupings on which you have been UPSC has been asking questions in prelims especially. So in 2022, if you see, there was a question regarding Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Missile Technology Control Regime, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an option, and it was asked that India is a member of which of the above. So subsequently, you can be asked other aspects of this SCO. So on this note, let's see some important prelim-centric information of this grouping. Now, SCO is basically what? It is an intergovernmental organization, permanent in nature. When was it established? Way back in 2001. Way back in 2001, and it is headquartered where? Not in Shanghai, but in Beijing. Remember this, that its headquarters is situated in Beijing, and it operates by the spirit called Shanghai spirit. And Shanghai spirit is nothing but it is about endorsement of certain common features that every member should adhere to, such as there should be mutual trust and benefit, there should be a spirit of equality, there should be a mechanism of consultation on basis of equality, there should be transparency in the conduct of the members, that is, there should be no secrecy, because if you see the legacy of League of Nations during the transition phase of World War I to World War II, it was operating on a very secretive note, that is, members were not transparent about their policies and actions. So that is why it becomes quite important for an organization to operate with a note of openness. So this is the Shanghai spirit. So Shanghai spirit is associated with what? SCO. Then the highest decision making body of SCO is what? The Council of Head of States, that is at the level of, say, from India it will be the Prime Minister, from the Beijing it will be the President, and all those prominent personalities, that is the Council of Head of States. It has two prominent bodies, that is Secretariat, that is situated where? In Beijing, and then you have a regional anti-terrorist structure which is situated where? In Tashkent, which is in Uzbekistan. And it does what? That basically it is an integrated approach by the members so as to basically bring down the issue of terrorism globally, and especially in the Central Asian and Asian region. Then about the membership, previously it was 8 members, but it has increased to 9 with the addition of Iran. So what are the members? That is Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, China, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, India, Pakistan, and Iran. These are the 9 members. You can remember as KKR Cutie Pie. That is, whoever is the fan of King Khan or say KKR, so it is KKR Cutie Pie, and there are total 9 members. And what is the goal of this organization? The goal is that promoting mutual trust and benefit and good neighborhood relations, then about promoting greater engagement among the members in the sectors of polity, in the sectors of economy, in the sectors of science and technology. Then the third one is about the increasing the robustness of the security infrastructure in the region, say Central Asia or the Asian region, through better, say for example, regional anti-terrorist structure is there. So all these mechanisms are there for what? Boosting the security infrastructure in the region so as to maintain peace and stability in the region. And then you have the promotion of rational, fair and democratic international economic and political order. So these are prominent goals that members are trying to achieve together. Now, based on this discussion, let's solve one MCQ. Now, this question says that with reference to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, consider the following statements. So it is a permanent intergovernmental organization established in 2001, which is a correct statement. The Council of the Heads of State is the highest decision-making body in the SCO, which meets once every year. That is, yes, it meets annually, like the last meeting took place where? In India only in 2023. So this is also a correct statement. The third statement says that the decision by the Council should be considered adopted if no member state raised objections. And that is why you have the what? Spirit of equality and consultation. That is, every member's opinion is going to matter, and there will be no imposition of views by more powerful countries on the less powerful countries. Okay, so this statement is also correct. So the correct answer is C, that is, all the three statements are correct. On this note, let's see the next topic, that is the topic of Director General of Civil Aviation, which appears on the page 13 of the Hindu and says that de-license go first fleet. That is, there is a process going on about of the de-licensing of the Go Air air carrier, and this is the order that has been issued by the High Court to the Director General of Civil Aviation. And this topic becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2, where you have a section of statutory bodies, and as you will see that this is also a statutory body. And in 2019, as you can see in the PYQ, there was a question regarding the regulatory bodies and independent regulators, and since this is also a regulatory body and statutory also, so you similarly you can have a question on DGCA also. So on this note, let's see certain important points about this organization or the body. Now, Director General of Civil Aviation is basically, it was constituted way back in 1946 under the Ministry of Civil Aviation, way back in 1946, and it operates under Ministry of Civil Aviation, and it is what, a statutory body. But from the starting it was not a statutory body. It was given statutory status in 2020 by the Act of Aircraft Amendment Act. This Amendment Act in 2020 gave the statutory status to this DGCA, and it is also a regulatory body, that is the regulator of the aircraft sector or the airline sector in India. And in this regard, let's see certain important regulatory functions of the DGCA. That is, firstly, it is responsible for the registration of civil aircraft, and for example, for the licensing and de-licensing, like in this context of the news is that it is about de-licensing of the Go Airways, okay, and it also gives license to any air carrier that it wants to start any aircraft agency as such. So this licensing functions is by DGCA, and licensing of pilots also is done by whom? The DGCA also, the DGCA only. Then you have a body at the international level, that is International Civil Aviation Organization. So its coordinating body in India is which one? That is DGCA. That is, this organization is going to coordinate with that ICAO, that is International Civil Aviation Organization, on behalf of Indian government, And for example, if there has been an aircraft incident or accident, then there are certain cases. For example, there is a criteria: if the aircraft weight is up to 2250 kg, then the investigation will be done by whom? The DGCA, because we have certain other agencies also that are investigating. For example, Bureau of Civil Aviation and Security we have, which is also a statutory body, so that also conduct investigation. But for certain aircraft, the investigation of the accident is done by the DGCA. So these are certain important aspects of DGCA that you can remember: statutory, regulatory, licensing and de-licensing, licensing of pilots, registration of civil aircraft, coordinating body with ICAO as such. So on this note, let's solve the MCQ. Now, with reference to the Director General of Civil Aviation, consider the following statements. It is a statutory body under the Ministry of Civil Aviation, which is a correct statement. The second statement is that it is responsible for registration and deregistration of civil airlines operating in India, which is also correct statement. Then the third statement is that it is the coordination agency with International Civil Aviation Organization, and this is also a correct statement. So all the statements are correct. So option C is the correct answer. On this note, let's go to the next topic, which is also the last topic for today. And this topic is from the perspective of GS paper 3, that is environment, regarding the Nilgiri Tahr, which has appeared on the page 7 of the Hindu, and it is in the context that Tamil Nadu, under its project Nilgiri Tahr, it is conducting a survey, and it is said that an IUCN representative is going to perform the role of an observer in that survey of the Nilgiri Tahr. And as you can see, in 2022, there was a question, a specific question regarding one of the species, wild species, that is the elephant group. And elephant as such, So on similar lines, you can have a specific question on the Nilgiri Tahr. So let's look into the prelim centric information of that animal. Now this is the picture of the Nilgiri Tahr that you can see on the screen, and this portion, kindly note it, it's going to be one of the major points in our discussion. Now Nilgiri Tahr, let's see certain important aspects. That is, it is the only mountain ungulate in southern India amongst the 12 species present in India. So it is what? The only mountain ungulate. What are the other ungulate species that we have in India? For example, musk deer, for example, the pygmy hog that we have. So these are what? Ungulate species. And in southern India, if you see, of the 12 species present in India, it is the only mountain ungulate there. And it is what? The state animal of Tamil Nadu, and its status is what? IUCN status endangered. It is falling in the category of endangered species. And what is the area that it inhabits? It basically inhabits the montane grassland habitats, which are known as what? The Shola grasslands. The Shola grasslands. And where is it found? In the southern region of the Western Ghats, especially in the area of Nilgiri Hills, and that is why the name Nilgiri Tahr. And elevation of how much? 1200 to 2600 meters. This you can remember the numerical fact. Then the other fact is that in terms of reproduction cycle, the female she gestates for about how many days? 180 days. And you should remember this, because when you see this question on animals, you can see that the maximum gestation period of elephant was asked. So similarly, the gestation period of a Nilgiri Tahr can also be asked. So it is how much? 180 days. And where is the largest chunk of its population found? In the Eravikulam National Park, where it is situated in Kerala. And the second highest is where? In the Annamalai Tiger Reserve, which is situated where? In Tamil Nadu. So these are two areas where the prominent chunk of presence of this Nilgiri Tahr is found. And there are certain other aspects also that I will tell you. That is, it is also known as mountain monarch for the reason that it is quite swift in terms of climbing the steep cliffs that you have in the Nilgiri region, and that is why the monarch of the mountain region. Then if you see, there is sexual dimorphism. That is this light gray area that you see. This is found where? In the male section, and that is why they are known as saddlebacks. The male section of the Nilgiri Tahr, Okay, and if you look at the importance of the Nilgiri Tahr to the Tamil culture, you will see that the mention of Nilgiri Tahr has been there in the Tamil Sangam literature. That is the Sangam literature that you have. And even in the Mesolithic age paintings of the Tamil Nadu and the other southern regions, you have the drawings of this animal. So this shows the importance of this animal to the culture of Tamil Nadu and the southern India as such. And in terms of male and female species, if you see, it is the male species that is larger in size in comparison to the female species. So this is all. For example, wait, I will give one more information, that there is a Nilgiri Tahr Day that is celebrated, and it is celebrated on 7th of October. It was basically declared under the project Nilgiri Tahr by the Tamil Nadu. So on this note, let's solve the MCQ of the topic. And this you can see the climatic impact, that is in the Shola grassland region. You have a lot of tea and coffee plantations taking place, and for that reason what is happening is that the grasslands are eroding, and for that reason the overall habitat of Nilgiri Tahr is reducing. Now let's solve the MCQ. That is, with reference to the Nilgiri Tahr, consider the following statements. It is listed as critically endangered in the IUCN Red List, which is the wrong statement. Why? Because it is endangered, not critically endangered. Then the maximum gestation period of the female is 360 days. This is 180 days. Then the third statement says that it is the only mountain ungulate in the southern India amongst the 12 species present in India, which is a correct statement. So the correct answer is only one. Okay, so this is all for today. Thank you for watching.